Thank you all for watching, man. Got some good stuff. If any of you followed up, okay, 3 p.m., that's good. I got you at 6, all right. In England, they got me at like, I don't know, 10, maybe 9. And over in Finglish, over there where Yaska lives, I think it might be 11 or 12 over there. 1800, Matt. Hey, look, you guys that tuned in last week, you got some meat and potatoes of some really cool stuff that I was wanting to talk about. Derek, hey, Ron, Alan, Carl, Howard. Man, look at these names. Hey, Chris. Hey, man. How's it going? Todd. Thank y'all. Got some good stuff coming up I want to tell you. 500, John. Jeff, Dennis. Okay, you guys, good. We got the clock squared away. I found an old shirt in my closet today. This is 2002. I think this was the Angel shirt from when we had a Mohegan Sun sponsorship, and we won our 3rd championship in a row racing a Suzuki, which is cool because now she's going to race on a Suzuki again in 2021, which that's really good for her, man. It's good for the sport too. I think she'll do good. Those bikes are fast, have a lot of RPM, and it's we haven't had a really itty bitty person that that has made one go really fast in a while, and I think it'd be neat to see how that does. Anyway, Angel always went fast on everything. If she could hold the throttle wide open and go straight and shift on, I know she shifts on time. I've seen her do it 1,000 times. But anyway, I'm just going to give a quick shout out to her. Even though it's on my arch enemy, the Vance and Hines team, I'm still a fan of the sport. Real quick story I want to say about people always use me as an example of the opposite of Vance and Hines, but all along I want to tell you, really, it's competition is what it is. And when I first started racing pro stock motorcycles, or before I raced pro stock motorcycles, Terry Vance and Byron Hines had the bar set up here in the drag racing industry. They were the tops, and we all looked up to them, and if we had a bike in their class, we wanted to outrun them. And I was running funny bike. I had a turbocharged Kawasaki, then a turbocharged Suzuki, and we started learning with nitrous oxide and stuff. And I would still go watch and see how fast Terry and Byron and the boys could go with their program, and it was always entertaining. So one day in the staging lanes, we were in Gainesville, and I went up to Terry and I said, "Hey man, I'm going to run pro stock next year." And he said, "Don't do it, man." I said, "Why?" He said, "Because me and Byron, we got the factory support, we got the advantages, we got the sponsors, we got the experience, and you're winning." He gave me some honest advice. He said, "You're winning." He said, "You need to stay where you're at." And he said, "You're a big fish in a small bowl," which is great. I just didn't see it that way. And he said, "If you stay where you are, you'll stay the big fish in that pond." And he said, "If you jump over into pro stock, you'll disappear because the competition is too strong." Well, I wanted to race pro stock so bad that he didn't have any idea how serious I was and how bad I wanted to race pro stock. And I wanted to put more effort into that than we did in how to win with the funny bike. And we won a lot of races that last year with our Suzuki nitrous oxide and turbocharged Suzuki. We won, I think it was a crazy number. I hate to make it wrong, but I think it was like 8 out of 11 races we won first place, and we qualified on the pole at like 10 of those races. And it wasn't easy. Hey, Dory and Roger, it wasn't easy winning those classes at all. It was hard. The competition was unbelievable, but I felt like we would be a good example of racing in pro stock. So I wanted to try it really bad, but he was trying to give me some good advice. He wasn't scared or nervous that we would outrun him. That wasn't even something he would think of. So I'm sure he was giving me good advice because I was a good client. I was a good customer. I bought a lot of parts from him. But I decided to race pro stock, and I'm going to tell you something, man. When you sign up at NHRA today, 2021, you sign up to go in and race, just know that Vance and Hines has set the bar. I don't care if it's a V-twin. I don't care if it's a 4-cylinder. They have the capabilities. They have the resources, and they have the brain power, and they have the funding to do it. And I just want you to know, go sign up and go race them given that. Don't go there and complain about that. Go there knowing that the bar is set right there in Indiana. Bar is set. And you are trying to run with them inside of those rules. And I just want to say all the times we won in all of our career, we won in pro stock over 80 times racing against Vance and Hines. And yes, we were lucky. Yes, we lucked into some wins. We backed into some wins. Somebody red lighted that shouldn't have. Somebody's chain fell off. Somebody's engine broke. Transmission didn't shift. But I'm going to tell you something. You don't do that 80 times. And let me tell you about the ones that we won that were legit efforts racing against Vance and Hines. We went in knowing that the competition was going to be number one in the world. We knew that it was going to be hard to win. And when we did win, the trophy and the victory celebration was 10 times sweeter because Vance and Hines was there. If Vance and Hines hadn't have been there, it wouldn't have been a cakewalk. It wouldn't have been a no-brainer. It wouldn't have been easy. But I'm going to tell you, it adds so much sugar to the cake, so much icing on the cake when you would win racing against the best. So I am not a fan, but I am a fan of motorcycle drag racing. I'm a big fan of NHRA Pro Stock motorcycle racing, but I'm not really a Vance and Hines fan. But I get it. They are the best. They set the bar, and if you want to be the best, you got to beat the best. So I wish y'all luck racing against them this year. They've always had a leg up from the very beginning, and it's not by accident, and it's not by being lucky, and it's not. I mean, they are good. Okay, so if you go in and you think you're going to win all the races just because you have what you have, that's good. But listen, I guess what I'm trying to say is if you in order to beat the best, in order to be the best, you have to beat the best. You guys that are calling me right now and texting me right now and messaging me right now, I'm sorry. I'm doing Tech Talk Live. I'm doing Tech Talk number 82. So if you ever catch me being an anti-Vance and Hines guy, it might just be Ford versus Chevy. It might be like the Cheeseheads versus the Bucks or the Cowboys versus the Washington. I mean, it's just competition. It's like McDonald's and Hardee's. I mean, I get it. I understand why they're the best. And they always added big flavor to our wins by being there. All right, I'm off of that wagon right now. Let's go to Tech Talk number 82. All right. Last week, I ran out of time talking to you about piston speed, feet per minute. And I was telling you that I had a number that I liked was 6,200 to 6,500 feet per minute. And the reason I like that, you got to quit texting me, man. It's going in front of my screen. I'm sorry. Tech Talk Tuesday. Look me up on Facebook. I'm live right now. Come on in. Watch it. I'm going to share something. This thing, hey, John Davis, this should be maybe called George's Technical Opinions, number 82, because these are my opinions. These are not the gospel. These are not the only way that this can be done. These are just the ways that I know, in my opinion, what I think I know. And please quote me on this. This is what I think I know. This is not, I'm not smarter than anybody. I have just been doing this every day. When I started motorcycle drag racing back in the 70s, there were a bunch of you guys there. I remember way back, man, them guys that were racing back then. Some of them are still racing today, but not many, because most of them are either got out of it because they were smarter than me and I stayed in too long, or they're dead, or they're retired, or they went straight flat broke and they're doing something else. But there was a lot of people I knew back then, and I'm going to tell you, it's exactly the same. When you quit and you came back here like 40 years later and you watch me, you say, wow, look at George. No, I did the same thing me and you were doing back then 40 years ago. I did it every day. I never stopped. Truck payments got bigger. Shop payments got bigger. Equipment payments got bigger. Gasoline prices got bigger. Entry fees got bigger. Purses got bigger. Trophies got bigger. Checks everything got bigger. And I stayed there. So folks said, wow, look at you go now. I said, I know. You remember when we used to race back in 1978? And yeah. I said, yeah, me and you both. We were like, we had $5 is all we had. Well, you went and did what you did. You went and had a big family and got you a big job, and you were really important and got whatever you got. And I raced. That's all I did. So if I know what I think I know right now more than some of you, it's because I worked on it every day. And I'm going to tell you right here watching, if you worked on this, all of this, every day, 7 days a week, for all the hours you can, and it mattered to you as much as anything, you would be smart about it and you would learn a lot too. So I'm not claiming to be any kind of special something other than I paid attention for half a century. And this is what I think I know about piston speed. I'm going to tell you why it's important that we do this. Here's a power curve. Well, no, it's not. Let me change that. This is a piston speed curve in feet per minute. When it gets to 6,200 feet per minute, I believe you can make the most power right around in here, somewhere in this range. Might be 5,800, it might be 6,500, but that's not RPM. This is feet per minute. I know. Are you smarter than a fifth grader? Well, I don't know that, but a fifth grader can write better than me. But this range is where when the piston's going this fast, and then it starts going faster, your potential for making power goes down. And I believe it's because of ring seal. And also the parts are stressed. And when the parts are stressed and they're trying to break and they're trying to tear up, they get hotter and it generates more heat, therefore it generates less horsepower. So a guy contacted me that I was getting to when I ran out of time last week, but I want to bring it back up today. He's got a Pro Mod car, 900 cubic inches. He's got a 5.75 stroke. It's a V8. He turns that thing 8,500 RPM on the drag strip. And when you divide that by 6, he gets 8,000 feet per minute. 8,000 feet per minute. And I said 6,200, 6,500 is the most you should run. He came back and he said, yeah, but what about mine? Mine runs good. I set records. I win races, and I'm at 8,000. Well, you know what? He is definitely the exception to the rule. Now, did he have the most horsepower per inch you could get, where, let's say a 500 cubic inch is the most horsepower per cubic inch you could get, and the speed is around 6,000, 6,500 feet per minute. That's a good number for a pro stock car and a pro stock motorcycle. What if you went over here to 8,000? There's a net gain and a net loss here. If this is a 900 cubic inch engine and it takes 8,000 feet per minute to get horsepower to come up at 900 cubes, your horsepower per cubic inch number goes down, just like this curve. Even though you got more cubic inches and you got way more horsepower, instead of, say, 1,400 horsepower at this package right here, he may have 2,000 horsepower. But his horsepower per cubic inch goes down because he has to overspeed the parts to get there. And why does he have to overspeed the parts? Well, it's a packaging situation. There are some engines out there you can buy block it's got a 4,900 spacing. They got one that's a 5-inch space block. They got one that's a 5.3 space block, and it's the center to center here, 4.9, 5.0, and now there's a 5.3. That's how many inches between centers. And think about it, if you can get a 5.3 to center, you can get bigger pistons, bigger rings, longer crankshaft, more main bearings, more cam bearings. I don't know if you can get more main bearings, but you can get more cam bearings in there, and you can control the flex in that deal. You can also have a nice head gasket between the bores that will seal up. If you tried to take this 4.9 and put 5-inch pistons in it, well, they would be overlapped into each other. Think about that for a minute. 4.9 center with 5-inch bore pistons would be overlapped into each other. So you got to have cylinder wall clearance. You got to have cylinder wall room between the cylinders, and you got to have room for head gaskets. So it's a packaging situation. Now, John Causey, the late great guys up there at Sonny Leonard's, they would build these 8,000 feet per minute engines, and they made brutal power, but they didn't. I mean, like his engine, I asked him, I said, did you ever dyno it to 8,500 RPM? He said, no. He said, but it does go that high on the racetrack. And I said, okay, good point. But he might make peak horsepower at 7,800, whereas this 500 guy over here, makes peak horsepower at 10,500 or 10,000, and this one will make peak horsepower at 7,800 or 7,900. Because the stroke is too big, the piston speed is too big, and the efficiency of the piston speed feet per minute is falling off. The bigger you go past this number, which I just picked out because the record-holding engines, the engines that hold records on horsepower per cubic inch, not horsepower period, but horsepower per cubic inch. It's like an efficiency thing. If you got 3 horsepower per inch, it's going to be somewhere between 62 and 6,500 feet per minute. If you've got one that's got 3.5 horsepower per cubic inch, it's going to be somewhere between 62 and 6,500 feet per minute. So that's a good baseline for you to work around where you can control ring seal. Now, you guys aren't falling off too fast. What happens at 6,500? Well, you got a piston. And this piston, this is a big cutaway of a big racing piston right here. This piston is going up and down 50 to 100 times a second. 50 to 100 times a second. And this ring right here is trying to hang on for dear life. And when I said it's going 6,200 feet per minute, 6,200 feet, that's more than a mile. This piston travels on a Pro Stock car with 3.5 stroke. On a Pro Stock car with 3.5 stroke, this piston only goes up and down 3.5 inches. Okay, at 10,000 RPM. This piston right here. At 6,200 feet per minute. That means it goes over a mile in a minute. What's a mile? 5280 or something? I can't remember what a mile is anymore. 1320 times 4. I can do the math. 1320 times 4 equals 5280. A mile is 5,280 feet. So this piston goes way more than a mile in 1 minute, and it has a limitation of 3.5. Now, let me tell you what's unique about what that is. That 3.5 stroke, where the piston only goes up and down 3.5 inches, and it's going to go 6,500 feet per minute, and a mile is 5,280 feet. That means it goes over a mile in 1 minute, but it stops and starts 50 to 100, no, 100 times it starts and stops inside of a 3.5 inch cylinder. So guess what? It is averaging 6,200 feet per minute. The peak speed is way bigger than that because this 6,200 feet per minute includes coming to a dead stop, 0 feet per minute, 0 piston speed, and 0 piston movement, and 0 stroke movement. It comes to a dead stop twice. When it gets to the bottom of 3.5, it stops. When it gets to the top of 3.5 inches stroke, it stops. And it has to go 6,200 feet in 1 minute and stop and go and stop and go and stop and go over and over and over. So the average piston speed is 6,200. Now, you get that Pro Mod guy where he's turning that thing 8,000 feet per minute, but he has a 5.75 stroke. Let's stick that in the equation to see the extremes of extreme. He has a 5.7 inch stroke. Y'all know how long that is. That makes this piston go down further and goes up further. So he goes at 8,000 RPM, he's going 5.7 inches, but the piston is going so fast that it averages 8,000 feet per minute. That's 1.5 miles in 1 minute. In less RPM. The piston's going so fast that this stuff can't hang on. Let's go there and talk about why that's scary. All right? When the piston's going 8,000 feet per minute or 6,200 feet per minute, the piston's on the wrist pin. It's on the connecting rod. When this goes to the top and stops, this piston tries to keep going. And this rod stops. And the tension of this piston weighing 500 grams, this wrist pin weighing 100 grams, and all these rings, all this weight keeps going when the piston stops. So it tries to break this wrist pin off. It tries to tear the piston off. It tries to break this rod in half. This end stops at the top of the stroke. This end stops at the top of the stroke. This piston keeps going. This rod's trying to break in half. So we've got piston speed limits for several reasons. One, how long will these parts hold together? How long will the wrist pin stay straight? How long will the piston stay on the rod when this stops? And it's the tension of the piston trying to get off at TDC that tears up the stuff more than it is compressing the rod from pressure pushing down on it. I know that sounds crazy because big horsepower tries to compress these, and they will break off. They'll break the small end off, they'll break the big end off, they'll even break them off the crankshaft for lots of different reasons. But the thing that works for us at 6,200 in drag racing, feet per minute, not RPM. Just so you know, this 6,200 number right here, that's feet per minute. That's a pro stock car at 10,500 RPM. That's what this is. That's a Suzuki at 13,000 RPM. That is a 160 cubic inch S&S pro stock V-twin at 10,000 RPM. They all run about 6,200 feet per minute limit. Now, can it go faster than that? Yes, because this guy, this Pro Mod guy with a 5.7 stroke, Pro Mod car guy, he's proven it can go 8,000 feet per minute. But I'm going to tell you something. The wrist pin's trying to come out, the piston's trying to come off the rods, and the rod's trying to come off the crank. And that's not even all. This is where the power tanks when you get to that speed. I'm going to draw the piston one more time. Here's the ring. Okay, this is not attached to this piston. This ring is slipped into this ringland. And this piston's going up, and it goes to a dead stop and stops cold. At 10,000 RPM, this piston stops. At 10,500, this piston stops. The Suzuki Pro Stock Suzuki piston at 13,500, the piston stops. I mean, like, dead stops. Like, it's going so fast you can't see it, and then it goes, stops, and then turns around and goes back the other way. When this piston stops, this ring keeps going. The inertia of this ring, the weight of this ring keeps going. And when this piston stops and the ring keeps going, can't go far. Can't go far. Let's blow it up really big. Here's the piston and the ringland. And just to exaggerate a little bit, the ring sits in here and it's unattached. So this ring is moving around the way it wants to. And if you got good gas ports over here and it's pushing pressure in here, it pushes this ring out when the combustion pressure is in there. When you got fire in the cylinder, it pushes the ring out. When there is no fire in the cylinder, this ring relaxes. But it goes up and down 100 times a second. So at 100 times a second, this ring is sealing up, coming loose, sealing up, coming loose. And when you get up to 6,000 or 6,500 feet per minute, this is 6,200 feet per minute. When it gets somewhere around here and you start keeping the piston going faster all the way to 8,000 like the Pro Mod guy's doing, now he's losing ring control. His piston's stopping so hard and going so far, so fast, and it stops, and it's going so far and so fast, and it stops. The ring loses control. So the horsepower potential falls over. That's what I wanted to tell you last week when we got cut off with time. Another good question somebody sent me says, why do you have to be 30 minutes? Well, I don't have to be. I started off 82 weeks ago being 30 minutes. Sometimes it's 25, sometimes it's 35. But that number up in the top left, or how many people are watching, it kind of falls off when you get to running too long-winded, or if I tell stupid stories, or if I talk about things that nobody cares about, these numbers start falling off up here. So one thing I want to tell you is stroke is next to last when you're making decisions on your engine plan. Rods lengths is the last. And I'll tell you two reasons why. Cubic inches make torque, not stroke. Stroke makes torque, yes. Cubic inches make torque, yes. Because if you want more low-end power, put more cubic inches in it. It's bottom line. Simple as that. If you put more stroke in it, it might make more torque. But here's the reason why. I want to tell you why this is last. Stroke is last because bore matters. The bore dictates how big the valves can be. Make sense? If you have a cubic inch limit and you can only be 500 cubic inches, just to call a number out, and you want to put more stroke in it, you have to put a smaller bore to be able to put more stroke in it. If you put a smaller bore, you have to put smaller valves in it for them to fit inside the bore. So if you want to make more power and flow more air, you have to run bigger valves. So then, therefore, you put the biggest bore you can in so you can get the biggest valves in. And you will have less stroke to get the same cubic inches, because it takes bore times stroke to get cubic inches. You have to have both. So if you get to choose bore and stroke, always pick bore, because stroke is next to last. And rods to me, and this, like I'm saying, this is George's technical opinion, number 82, is the rods are last, because you got to have a good ring stack. Doesn't matter. You got to have a good ring stack. So if you got the right ring pack, and you got the biggest valves that'll fit, and you got the most stroke you can get to fit the cubic inches of the engine rule, whatever's left is the rod length. Do not cheat your ring stack for longer rods. Do not cheat the amount of stroke you get to get rod length in there. This is important to me, number one, the size of the bore. The next thing that's important is the stroke. How long is the stroke? In order to get to the cubic inch limit. Then you do the math and say the rod is, take your tape measure out and you say the rod is from here to here, and that's how long the rod is. If it's a little bit long or a little bit short, it doesn't matter as much as the bore, and it doesn't matter as much as the cubic inches. The only time I can see when a rod length matters is on a V-twin like a Harley. And you got the crank in here, and you got the stroke here, and you got a piston. And if these pistons go to bottom and they hit each other, if you put longer rods in it, you can move these pistons way up here, and then you can put bigger pistons in it. They can get this big and they can get this big without hitting each other, just by adding rod length. So make this longer here, and you can get the pistons further away from each other so they don't hit. Now that's fine on a little cubic inches, but if you got big cubic inches, if you got big RPM, big bore, short stroke, you're going to rev it up. The longer you make the rods, the longer the push rods get. These are the push rods going up to the rock arms. 4 cams, big push rods. The longer these rods get, the more they pole vault. So if you're trying to open this thing and it's got 1,000 pounds of spring pressure and you're turning 10,000 RPM and you're trying to open the spring, this push rod does not stay straight. It bows like a pole vault, and then when it rewinds or unwinds, this thing here will shoot the rock arm off the top. It'll shoot the lifters out the bottom, and it will bang the valves on the pistons because you don't have valve train control. So our engine limits are based on bore, which makes piston speed, which RPM, and then valve control. If you can't control the valves, to take advantage of the piston speed, or you got more piston speed than you can have valve control, you've got to rearrange these priorities in order to get where you want to be. And to tee up next week, I'm going to talk to you about something else that happens. You ever notice on all the engines that the intake valve is this big and the exhaust valve is this big? You ever notice that? Why? Why is the intake valve bigger than the exhaust valve? And why is when you have a 4-stroke engine, you have 180 degrees of intake, 180 degrees of compression, 180 degrees of power, and 180 degrees of exhaust? Why do you have just as much time for exhaust as you do intake? But why is the intake valve bigger? That's good stuff for next time, and we will go there. Remind me, why is the intake valve bigger? Why does our industry talk us into a bigger intake valve than a big exhaust valve? Man, that was fun. Thank y'all for your time. I got my bacon socks on. Check this out. If you can read this, bring me bacon. Anyway, have a great day. Love y'all. Thanks for watching. May God bless. See you at Hogs Gone Wild Friday and Saturday. Stay tuned, man. Stay tuned.